Hey, everybody, this is Michael Watley, and I am proud to be your NCGOP chair. And I want to welcome everybody here to NCGOP Studios. We're doing a live in studio version of our chairman's chat with Judge Chris Dillon, and he is a candidate for the Court of Appeals. And, Judge, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you got going with the campaign and how everything looks?
Thank you. My name is Chris Dillon. I was born here in Raleigh. I was the youngest of 5 children. My father was a businessman here. My mom was a school teacher. Was in banking for a while. Have a real estate license and practiced law for a while. And in 2012, the people of North Carolina elected me to the Court of Appeals. And so I've really enjoyed the 8 years there. I teach a class at UNC Law School and Campbell Law Schools in real estate transactions. And married to my wife, Ann, who's also from Raleigh. She's the youngest of 5 children, and together we have 5 children. So we keep a quite busy household, and just glad to be here. On the ballot this year, we've got 5 seats up on the Court of Appeals, and I'm running for one of them to keep my seat. So thank you for having me.
No, happy to do it. And we've spent a lot of time on the chairman's chat and frankly with campaign activities all around the state talking about how important the judicial races are. And really this year, it seems that they're more important than ever. Talk a little bit about, when we see the Supreme Court, where we've got a 6-1 Democratic advantage. On the Court of Appeals, there's an 8-1 Democratic advantage. How important are these judicial races? How important is it for us to have conservatives and Republicans, in these seats as opposed to liberal Democrats?
Well, it's very important to me. In fact, the main reason I registered Republican way back in the day was really because the president picks the judges. And my judicial philosophy has always been judges should apply the law. And the way I explain it is I think a judge has 2 approaches, and I'll answer your question more fully, but to get a little backdrop, the way I think about the law should be applied is a judge can come to a case with one of two thought processes. Either they're trying to figure out what the law really says, whether they like it or not, and they're going to apply it, or they're going to already have a preconceived idea what they want to happen, and they're just going to pick a judicial philosophy. It's the same way I think some people read the Bible, and I'm guilty of it, because sometimes, am I trying to figure out what God's trying to tell me, or do I have a preconceived notion of what I want to do, and then I'm going to find the verses that back it up? And so the judiciary is very important on the state level, because, and it's sort of the forgotten branch sometimes, because we have a lot of focus on the federal judiciary, but the state judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, is the final word on what the state constitution means. And so people can bring cases before the federal court, and even if there's a conservative majority on the federal court, somebody could bring an action in state court and say it violates the state constitution. And if a judge wants to find an answer that they want, they can rule that the Supreme Court can rule a way that the law really doesn't say, and there's nothing the federal courts can do about it, because the state Supreme Court has the final word. And I do want to clarify that when I say conservative judge, I think what people need to understand is a judge who will follow the law. It's not somebody who's going to bend over backwards to uphold Republican legislation anymore. But I think a conservative is somebody's going to apply the law, and I think that's what Republicans that's all they really want. That's what we want.
And you mentioned being able to get a ruling out of a federal court and having that maybe overturned by the state courts. We saw a prime example of that just last year in the redistricting cases, where the federal Supreme Court said that the issues of redistricting were inherently legislative, and the federal courts were not the right places to be able to litigate that. And so the plaintiffs in that case turned around, filed in the state court, and immediately were able to get an order that said that we had to redistrict. And of course, now we have a brand new federal lines that are different even than they were in 2018, which affected our congressional representation in this election cycle.
Yeah, our state constitution provides that our legislature is divided into districts. It doesn't guarantee that if your party wins 55% of the state vote in the aggregate, you get 55% of the seats. What may seem fair or unfair is different. What is it to be constitutional? And our Constitution says to divide in districts. But what could happen is somebody could bring an action in state court on any map and say it violates some clause in the state constitution, and there's nothing a federal court could do about it, because though it might not violate the federal constitution, if our Supreme Court says it violates the state constitution, then that's the end of the road. I mean, as far as litigating that case.
So a lot of people are aware that we have, a 6-1 Democrat majority on the Supreme Court. A lot of folks are aware that the Supreme Court is kind of the top tier here in terms of ruling on the state court constitution. What is the impact of the Court of Appeals? Tell everybody kind of what is your day-to-day life on the Court of Appeals, and what are the types of cases that you generally deal with?
We hear most every appeal in the state of North Carolina, and most every appeal that comes from the trial court comes to us first. The Supreme Court hears very few cases. They don't have to hear a case at all unless we sit in panels of 3. If there's a 2-1 vote on our court, then they have to hear it. But if we rule 3-0, they don't have to hear it, and most of the time they don't hear it. So a lot of the appeal stops with us, but we get a lot of constitutional cases and things like that affect people. And so I think our court's very important because it's where most of the action is, quite frankly. I mean, very few cases reach the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court's very important. And as you said, there is a 6-1 majority right now, but and we have a slight majority of Democrats on our court too. And a lot of these majorities are due to recent retirements we had last year where the governor can fill an appointment. So that's how all that kind of happened.
Well, you're the only Republican that is incumbent who's running for re-election on the Court of Appeals. Talk a little bit about your experience and what you think that has led to you in terms of shaping how you ran before you were on the court versus how you're running now that you're an incumbent.
Well, this is when I ran last time, the races were officially nonpartisan. But there was a conservative judge in every race and one that was more progressive in every race, and most people knew who they were. But now we have the party labels on the ballot. I think a good the way I approached my race, my election is I think most people in the middle want judges who will apply the law. And if you can look at 2016 as a great example. I won in 2012. In 2016, we had party labels on the ballot. And Trump won the state by about 3 points. The governor won a jump ball. That was a tie. But, just about every federal, every Court of Appeals judge and Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals judges that had the party labels, they won by 7. So we actually do a little bit better. So I think people want that. So, I'm trying to go out there and tell people, guys, we have, voters, we have an imbalance on the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court right now, and try to get the middle voter and tell them how important it is to vote for the judges. And so, it's made it a lot easier this time around because we do have the party labels on the ballot. And if you tell people we have a 6-1 supermajority, I think that gets a lot of people's attention. I think people in the middle are more inclined to vote for the conservative judge anyway, because most people want conservative judges. I think every poll has said that.
Yeah.
So I think a great tactic is to make sure Republicans finish the ballot and make sure people tell just the moderate voters, because we have a lot of unaffiliated voters.
Right.
And that's another thing about the strategy. If you look at voter registration, Democrats have gone down 130,000 voters since the last election. We're up 30 or 40,000 voters, but the unaffiliated are way up. And so, I mean, there's more unaffiliated voters in Wake County than there are Democrats. And I think people don't realize that. And I think those are voters we can win, and they want conservative judges by and large.
Yeah, we've seen certainly that we've been at a 60-40, if not more, advantage among the unaffiliated that have broken over, particularly in the age of Trump. And President Trump has really resonated with people on every side of the aisle. The Democratic crossovers were huge. The numbers that we saw from the unaffiliated were there. Want to switch gears real quick. One of the questions that we ask everybody on the Chairman's Chat is tell us a little bit about your family life, and we do that by leading with so how'd you meet your wife, and how'd you get to be so lucky to have her say yes, and here you're off and running with 5 kids in the family, but it all started with how you met her.
I grew up in Raleigh. My father was an announcer for state basketball games, so I went to state games all my life. She went to state games all her life too. Never met her. I went to public school, graduated from Broughton High School. She went to private school. Never met her. We both went to Carolina. I gave her a ride home one day in the late 80s, but then didn't see her for like several years. And then we ran into each other in 1994. I dated her for 3 months and proposed marriage to her. And we got married 6 months later. I was 30 years old. But it was funny because we knew a lot of the same people. So she would like tell people, oh, you're dating somebody. Who are you dating, Ann? And oh, I'm dating Chris Dillon. And they were like, really? You know, they would laugh. And so I made sure I proposed right away. And we've been very blessed. I was 30, she was 29, and we decided to start a family. And within 4 years, that fourth year, we had twins. And so we had 4 children in our first 4 years. So we have 5 children now, but it's been great. You know, I have 3 beautiful daughters and 2 great sons, and 3 of them are actually out there right now doing a lot of COVID testing. They're testing all the football players that are they're playing in ACC games. They're doing a lot of that stuff. I've had several graduate from Carolina. We have one more still at Broughton High School.
Right.
So, but that's how we met.
Well, so I have to ask, and I had the same conversation with Judge Gore, right? Because my twins are 16, and his twins, I think, are 11 at this point. And how old are your twins?
My twins are 21.
Outstanding.
They're my twin daughters, and I'm very kind to them because I think my daughters will take care of me in my old age. I think so. So they're very sweet. I love them. I love all my children, but yeah, they're 21 years old, and they were a blessing. That was the only ultrasound that I looked at that I could really tell what it was. I saw 2 blobs. I was like, those are twins. And we had 2 kids, we had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old at the time. We saw that ultrasound. So
that's the most amazing experience. So I'm glad that
it was awesome.
I'm not alone in the Republican Party.
They were born on Father's Day, right after Payne Stewart made that putt at the U.S. Open. My wife was like, I'm not feeling good. I'm like, I need to watch the end of this tournament. I really don't feel good. And we were at the hospital, and they were born that night. So they're awesome.
That's awesome. I want to go back to kind of judicial philosophy and really when we talk about conservative judges, we do hear a lot of conservative politically, right? And President Trump has come at redefining, I think, conservatism to some degree because he is very a populist, a conservative populist as opposed to just a social rights, conservative only. But when you look at where we are as a society and the divide that we have between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, I don't think I've seen a divide this big, certainly since 1984 when we saw with Ronald Reagan's reelect and Jesse Helms was running against Jim Hunt. How does the judicial philosophy that you guys are running with a conservative label kind of fit into that overall political narrative?
Well, I'll speak for myself, and I could probably be confident that the other judges, I know that the other judges on our ballot feel the same way. We just think the judiciary, we love the law, and we just think the law should be applied, as it says. And so there are political fights that the Democrats and Republicans are going to have in the governor's mansion and the state legislature. But the role of the judge is simply just to apply the law. And I think I get frustrated. People get frustrated where you spend years trying to get something passed. You finally get it passed. It might be a constitutional amendment or whatever. And then just a judge strikes it down. Now, if it's unconstitutional and it's clear, that's fine. But but when judges act politically to reach a result because they don't like the law, when a judge makes a decision to decide something simply because they don't like the law, there's laws that I've upheld. There's jury verdicts I've upheld that I might have not agreed with. But we have to stay in our lane. There's a judicial lane to stay in. There's a role for a jury. And if it's a fair trial, I might not agree with it. We don't reverse it. And if the legislature has the authority to make policy for the state, and they have broad authority, they are the people's representatives, and they stay within the state constitution, I may or may not like the law. I don't care if it's a Democrat legislature, whoever it is. I think a conservative philosophy is we're not going to overturn that law because it's the will of the people and it's constitutional.
Well, I think that's so terribly important because, we do have, Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, and we've got a Democratic governor. And if those guys can get together and hammer something out, you would think that they would be able to make it stick. And the courts are obviously coming in there. It really is, I think, striking when we have a Chief Justice who says that she's very proud to be a social warrior, a social justice warrior, that she feels like the courts should be used as a platform to advance a progressive agenda as opposed to applying the law and interpreting the law. That's something that gets a lot of people's attention. And when we look at all of the judicial races this particular cycle, it really does come down to a slate of activism versus a slate of conservative approach. What's it like to run as part of a slate? We've got the 3 Supreme Court justices, we've got the 5 Court of Appeals justices that are running as Republicans. And we've really kind of seen you guys acting as a team and as a slate. What's that like?
It's been good. This year we have, and I think I'm right in saying this, we have, I mean, there's 22 people that sit on our appellate court, 7 on the Supreme Court, 15 on the Court of Appeals. And this year we have more races on the ballot than I think we've ever had. We have 8. 8 of us are up. And just so people realize this, we all are running for different seats. There are 8 separate races, and each race has 2 candidates. There's 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. So we're not running against each other. It's not like you pick 5 of us at large. So but in this time of, where it's hard to go meet people because of the COVID and all that, it's been especially great that, we were unified from the beginning. We didn't have any primaries. So we all got to know each other early on. So we've developed this camaraderie, which I think has been great. And the state's a big state, and it's hard to get around because people aren't meeting as much. But what's been good is I can cover some Republican meetings in certain parts of the state, and others can cover. And we are part of the same text chain, and we're in contact every day to to encourage each other and to tell stories and basically it's been a great thing too, because one of the other candidates will talk to a voter or hear things, and then they'll tell us. And so it's something we can become aware, because we're not out there just to talk to people. We're out there to listen to people too. And, we want to educate people on the judiciary, but we want to hear other stories and see what's important to voters and or how they're thinking. And so it's been a great resource, because we can't get all over the state. I can't get all over the state. So to have 8 people kind of working together toward the same goal, it's been awesome. It's been really good.
That's fantastic. And I have to give, Justice Newby kudos, for really trying to make sure that he worked with you and recruited the other judges and recruited the other candidates and everybody there. And you look at, the strength of the slate, that you've all got judicial experience in the candidates on the Court of Appeals. We've got military experience with Judge Gore and Judge Griffin. You're running as an incumbent. April and Mr. Carpenter are doing such a great job coming off the district court judges. Yeah. That's really neat to see. I think that you guys bring such a strong.
I want to say that, and with the Court of Appeals, that's so important, because my background is more real estate business, and we all have weak spots in what our knowledge is. But since we hear every type of appeal in the state, it's great to have a diverse group of people all committed to apply the law, but with knowledge, and we can kind of bounce things off each other, because we all have different backgrounds. So there's things that I may know a little bit more about than another judge. Not that I'm going to tell them how to vote, but just to give them some background, and vice versa. But to be with 8 people that have a diverse background, but we're all committed to apply the law, I think serves our state very well. To have a great collegial Court of Appeals, that I think is something to be proud of.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier your interest in being a Republican because of the federal judiciary. We have never seen a president who has made more federal judicial appointments that have gotten through in his first term than President Trump. 205 of his appointees have been confirmed by the Senate. And, thanks to Senator Tom Tillis for his work on the Judiciary Committee to get all those through. What does it mean, to the American people when you see that type of a remaking of the federal judiciary? Because we just had so many vacancies that were there prior to President Trump coming on board and being able to fill those, and even flipping several of the district courts, let alone, and I'll ask another question in a minute about the Supreme Court, but to see the volume from President Trump that's getting confirmed, what does that mean for the American people?
I think, there's some circuits that, you would always say they're always reversing, things left and right. And I think it's good to have it's not to have judges that are going to uphold acts just because they're passed by Republicans, but they're going to apply the law and stay in their lane. And it's just not another avenue for some group to super legislature. Court should not be that. And I think it's so good, because federal judges serve for life. And I wrote an opinion the other day where I cited a case from 1942. I cited a case that's 80 years old, and I know Judge Berger talks about this sometime. Some judge 80 years ago wrote a case that's still the law of our state. It's the controlling role in our case. So these appointments that Donald Trump are making right now, these are people that are going to be serving on our judiciary for a long time, writing decisions, which will be followed for a long, long time. So it is so important that we get people that are humbly, they're judicial humble, and they know that what their role is, and they'll stay in their lane. They'll let Congress do their job, and they'll stay their law. They're not going to be super legislators.
Yeah, and when you look at the makeup of the Senate, right, the Democrats are convinced they're going to be able to win the Arizona seat.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to win the Colorado seat, can win the Maine seat, which really means that this North Carolina seat could be the seat that decides whether we have Republican gavels and a Republican majority leader, or we have Chuck Schumer and Democratic gavels in terms of the judiciary. How important is it for us to have Tom Tillis in the Senate? One, to make sure that we still have that majority, but two, to have him on the Judiciary Committee, where he's played such an essential role in getting all these judges confirmed.
I mean, I think is vital. If you're concerned about the federal judiciary, then you need to be concerned about the Senate. When I first registered to vote, it was around the time when a lot of the judiciary hearings that, quite frankly, Joe Biden was one of the people on that committee, and it was where the term borking came from, where they basically just attack these conservative judges, and so that was really a big part of my life. So the Senate is very important for that regard, and having and I know Senator Tillis. He came to my swearing in, and he's a very kind man. I mean, I don't know him well, but he's always been very kind to me, and I appreciate it. And I think it's important for somebody to have somebody from North Carolina to be on that Judiciary Committee, because it's an important committee, and I think he's. From my conversation with him, he's committed to have judges who aren't going to be bending over backwards for one part or the other, but who are just committed to follow the law, and so people know that when they go to court, because they can know what to expect. You're not going to have a judge overturn something because they don't like the law. I mean, I will just say this: appellate courts are so important. I come from a real estate background. People want certainty when it comes to when they go to court. A lawyer wants to be able to advise their client. This is the law. This is the way it is. The Supreme Court has held this. And it's a little bit hard to do that if you're not sure what some judge is going to do, if they're just going to overturn something because they don't like it. I mean, so I think it's just important to our economy to have judges that you can have some certainty in. And I teach that to my law students all the time. And we want certainty, because the more uncertainty you have, that makes things riskier, and people less investment because people don't know where they're getting. And so, and the courts play a vital role, just even in the economy.
Right. And paramount in that universe is the Supreme Court. And what was neat back in 2016 when President Trump said, here's a list of judges that I would pick from the Supreme Court, and put that list out there and for the Court of Appeals as well as the Supreme Court. I think, that first time we've seen a president do that really caught a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, that was different. I never seen that. Yeah, that's true.
And, he's since, just recently put out a list that he said that he would consider for the next 4 years. And we're back. So, hey, we were talking a little bit about President Trump and him putting out a list back in 2016 of the judges, the types of judges that he would consider for appointments to federal judiciary, as well as the Supreme Court. And obviously, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh were both on that. He just recently put out a new list. What does it say to have a president who's basically bold enough to put that type of a list out there? That's not something we've seen from other candidates before.
Well, I think I think the judiciary and how a president picks judges is important. I mean, it really is. And I think, it should be important to more and more people because it's important to a very small number of people, and I think people don't realize that. So I think that he's not hiding the ball. He's telling you exactly the type of judge he wants, and then he's going to put on there. So I think the more information somebody's going to give us, the better we can evaluate the candidate.
Could not agree more. And I think when we look at the makeup of how on the presidential race is going to be determined in part because of what people see as the judges. Obviously, here in North Carolina, we've got a governor's race that's very, very key. We've got our legislative races that are very, very key. But those judicial races are so important.
Oh, yeah.
And really something that we here at the party have really focused on in terms of trying to make sure that we are raising awareness of the importance of it for our county parties and for our auxiliary groups. And, you know, we're seeing a great response from all across the state. Everybody wants to help you guys. And you've got the slate card, you know, that has all 8 of you on there as well as other materials that we're putting out there. But let's go back to your race, right? So how do we help you in your reelection case? What is it that all of our viewers of the Chairman's Chat and all of our supporters across the state can do to help Chris make sure that he gets reelected?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I mean, I point out that my experience is something that's a little bit different. That there's 10 people running for 5 seats, and I got more experience than the other 9 candidates. But
right.
I think the way to really help us is it's just twofold. It's how you would help all of us. There are to make sure you tell your Republican friends, finish the ballot. And we do a better job finishing the ballot than when it was a nonpartisan race. 25% of the people would drop off and not vote. So if 100,000 people voted for president, only 75,000 people voted for the judges. But with the R's and the D's, it's better. But also tell your unaffiliated friends, let them know there's a 6-1 supermajority. We need conservative judges. I mean, one of the others, people want conservative judges. Every poll has said whether the Democrat, whatever things, you know, might finish 50-50, you know, whatever 50-50, but on conservative judges, it's a lot higher. So I think people want conservative judges, and let them know that, you know, right now we have a 6-1 supermajority the other way. And I think that makes it simple, and just look for the R. The R is on the ballot. So it's pretty simple.
Excellent. Well, I tell you what, I want to encourage everybody who's watched our series over the course of this year and had a chance to meet all of our judicial candidates. Make sure that you do go down and vote every single one of our judges on the ballot. Make sure that you're supporting each one of our candidates, including Judge Dillon, financially. And they've all got individual websites where you can go and you can donate. Support the Judicial Victory Fund that we've opened up and created here at NCGOP that we've used to help all 8 of our statewide candidates. And then make sure that you're talking to your friends, your family members, your colleagues, your coworkers, anybody that you have a 5-minute conversation with is going to be 6% more likely to go vote for a Republican, either absentee voting or early voting or on election day.
That's right.
But make sure that you go engage. These races are going to be so important. Judge, I want to thank you so much for coming into the studio here and
this is awesome.
Joining us for our Chairman's Chat, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your attention. We appreciate it.
And I want to thank all of our viewers who have tuned in every week and are going to continue to tune in as we continue the Chairman's Chat series. And we appreciate your support for all of our candidates, and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.